Okay, jetzt glaube ich, sollten langsam die ersten noch reinkommen. Gespannt. Sie. So. Yes, for those of you who are already joining, feel free to just settle in, make yourself comfortable, and think about the questions. You don't need to answer all of them, but of course, it's an invitation to let the rest know from which location you're joining, what you're most curious about today's talk, and of course, also, how you're connected to sustainability, which topics you're focusing on right now with regards to that topic. So we just love to get to know you a little bit better. Okay. Okay, I see Hamburg already from the north. Edinburgh, even quite international. Munich, okay, big Munich presence. Yeah, a lot of Munich. Vienna, nice. La Plata, Argentina even. Wow, Copenhagen, very international. Switzerland, Tuscany, more Copenhagen, Vienna. Okay. Switzerland, Egypt. Wow. Okay, cool. Belgium, wow. Very international round. More Munich. Super nice. Yeah, so we thought maybe wait one more minute just that everyone can arrive. Okay. Very interesting questions, how we can implement circular economy in the aircraft business. So I think we also have a pretty interesting mix of participants, some automotive experts in here, but I think also from various industries. So I'm very curious about all your questions, where we'll have plenty of time more towards the end of the session. Yes, insights from other branches or industries. Yes, I think that's a great one. What we're all looking forward to. Okay. Checking the time. Oh, Lisboa even, nice. Even though I'm very happy we also have some sun today in Munich, but I would say let's start now. I think it looks great. A lot of people already joined. So yes, a very warm welcome from my side. I'm Rebecca. I work as an innovation consultant at HYVE, and you're here at the premiere of our Sustainable Transformers Roundtable. So actually a very special welcome to all of you. I'm very happy that you joined. And of course, a big thank you to you, Anna and Johannes, who are our speakers for today. I'm very excited and really looking forward to all your expertise and insights. And before we kick it off, just a short introduction about HYVE and why we started this format and what it is all about. So we're at HYVE, we're based in Munich. We are an innovation agency. We've been around for 22 years. That's way longer than I've been working. We have a pretty interdisciplinary team reaching from researchers to software and product designers, so we can really support our clients in the whole innovation process. And what's really at the core of what we do is that we want to put the user at the center in all of our innovations. So we do a lot of iterative testing throughout the whole innovation process. But not only the user, also the planet itself is becoming more and more important in our work. And you can see a little bit in my background, our graphic designers designed a super cool visual for our sustainability week that we're having right now. So this week, we wanted to start the year with the really focused topic of sustainability, to dive even deeper into how we can integrate that very systemically in the way we work. And we also consider ourselves as open innovators, as enablers. And we really want to bring people together and connect ideas and to inspire. And this is also what we want to do with the Sustainable Transformers Roundtable, because we believe that change can only happen when we all work together and when we really bring together different players, different industries, and if we drive the topic of sustainability together. And so each time we will choose one industry, 2 different players, and we will have 3 rounds. And I'm super excited that we're kicking it off today with the industry, the automotive industry. And we will start with Anna, who will share a lot of interesting aspects when it comes especially to the interior parts of the car, as she's a specialist for sustainability in interior parts. So we'll start with this more material perspective, and then we will move on in the second round. I can also move here to Johannes, who is from Sono Motors, to see a bit more of the digital aspects all around the topics of circular car. And then in the third round, we will open it up for a lively discussion and a Q&A, where also as you as attendees, of course, are able to ask all your questions. I think that's always when it gets the most fun, to really get in a lot of different perspectives and views. And here are little organizational aspects for you who are attendees. You're right now on mute just to avoid background noises, but of course, we also want you to be heard. And there are 2 ways how you can do that. So you can raise your hand in the chat, and of course, you can also interact in the chat and let us know your questions via writing. But whenever you raise your hand, we can also give you the option to actually ask your questions with an audible way. So just this as like a little organizational insight. And yeah, I would say let's get into it. Again, big thank you to you, Anna and Johannes, that you're here today, that you made the time. And I would say what all connects us, that we all somehow actually work for BMW, which is not too surprising when you live in Munich, I must say. You 2 pretty much directly within the company. And we at HYVE, we built up a service design lab where we actually work a lot when it comes to digital topics and really involving the user into all of the digital developments, which are also more and more prominent when it comes to driving and the whole consumer experience. And I guess it's also fair to say that we all care about sustainability, but let's see if we discover even more similarities. And for a start, I challenged the speakers to bring one item with which they would introduce themselves. And I must say, I haven't seen them before. So myself, I'm also quite curious what they brought. And so I would say, ladies first, I'm handing over to you, Anna, and I'm very curious to see how you will introduce yourself.
All right. Hi. So my name is Anna Goldhofer, and I work at BMW in the development of the interior as a sustainability specialist. So what I'm doing there is I look at parts, I calculate carbon footprints and see how we can make them more sustainable, how we can lower the carbon footprint, maybe even make it carbon neutral, and also how to enable a circular economy. And before that, I was studying, I did my master's in engineering and material science. And well, I did lots of internships and all that at BMW, and managed to work on a topic that I'm passionate about, which is sustainability within the industry. And well, the thing that I brought today is this badge. It's I don't know if you can see it. It's a One Young World attendee badge. And One Young World is a big conference of young leaders all across the globe. And it's really impacted me because basically the event is about all the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And there were so many crazily inspiring people on the stage talking about well, all their challenges they face, about war, about inequalities, about climate change, plastic pollution in the waters, and well, just really horrible things, and many experience them by themselves. But all of those people on the stage really got the energy somehow to really change their direct surroundings, to step up and do something about it. And that was super inspiring for me. It was a very emotional week. And after that, I think I was definitely on the sustainability track before that already, but it just reminds me that it's really on us to change the status quo. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I already saw how much you're involved in this topic, and I think what you brought probably explains very well where all your motivation comes from, to really change the status quo. And I think that already gives us a very good glimpse into your presentation. But yeah, I would also love to hear from you, Johannes. Also, big thank you that you're here today. And I'm also very curious, of course, what you brought.
Hi, everyone. My name is Johannes. I'm a product manager. That means I try to design experience that people have with products. And I do that for a company called Sono Motors, which is what you see over here. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. In my previous past, I've been working for BMW, obviously, on mobility services. I also see there's some participants from my old teams in the participants. Yeah, I've been working on mobility all the time. It's something that's very dear to my heart because it's a big part of sustainability. And it's something that has been, within my career since I ever started. By training, I'm a mechanical engineer. It's a funny thing because I literally don't do anything with it anymore, but that's why I'm also curious about Anna's presentation, because it's also what I was trained in. So it's always cool to see things from that. Other than that, I have an amazing 2-year-old daughter, and I brought an object today, and it's my, I don't know if you see it, that's my cycling cap, right? Because if you ask what describes Johannes, it's cycling. It's my passion, but it's also something that describes how sustainability funnels into everything I do. You will find me not using cars in the cities. You will find my colleagues kind of coming to me when I come in winter on my bike to work. And it also, in a way, if you translate that to mobility, it always reminds me that there's also this concept of frugality. I work in an industry where we talk about autonomous vehicles, but those are still vehicles, right? And we should never forget that the best way to get from A to B for our environment is if we walk, or if we take a bike. It's good for us. It's good for the environment, and that's why I chose this object today.
Yeah, very cool. I'm very sure there's a lot of avid cyclists in the audience as well. At least I know at HYVE we have a big team who's also very into biking. So yeah, very cool. I also have my mountain bike right next to me here in the office, actually. But I brought another item just to finish the round, because I thought it's unfair if I just challenge the speakers, then I also need to challenge myself. So I wanted to bring a tree, turned out to be a little difficult. So I have this plant, which you don't really see so well, but you see it's a plant, I hope. Because when I was a child, I had a cassette of a tree explaining the process of photosynthesis. And this got me so excited that sometimes I would stand outside when the sun was shining and secretly wished I could do that too. Of course, I knew I was not a tree, and I was also aware of that as a child. But still, I was very, very intrigued by that. I must confess, of course, I think I still have leaves in my hair now. A lot of that was also due to the fact that sugar is also released in that process. So that got me very excited as a child. And ever since that, I was really interested in nature and how we actually also deal with nature. I love being in the mountains. So it's something that's really dear to my heart to protect the world we live in. And yeah, that's why I also then, once I started studying always wanted to connect business. So I studied business, but always with a focus of sustainability and really seeing how also this can be connected and how we can create products or businesses that not even have a somewhat okay impact, but actually really do something for the better. And this is something that really interests me, especially in the field of innovations, in the field of new ideas, what we can do that actually have a positive impact on society and nature. So that's a little bit about myself, but of course we want to hear more about you guys, and that's why I also don't want to waste too much time with a very lengthy introduction about the topic. I think we all know the automotive industry is a very big one, and there's a lot of challenges ahead and a lot of changes, and especially when it comes to the aspect of circular cars, there's so many facets, and I don't think we'll have the time today to go into all of them. But I'm very excited about this combination of you two, that we at least get a glimpse into more the physical material side from Anna, and then also the more digital aspects and everything that goes around that with vehicle sharing and smart charging from the Sono side. So I'm very excited about this kind of also round aspects that we'll have. And that's why I would say the stage is yours, Anna. We're very excited to hear from you and to start round one.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
All right. So yeah, as you just said, I think it's important to say in the beginning that sustainability is a huge field, and there's no way that I can that I know all of it and that I can even tackle it in 50 minutes. So I chose to talk about what, parts of my daily work. I told you before, I focus on carbon footprints, but also on circular economy within parts from the development engineering side. So of course, there's lots more to it, but yes. So today we live in a linear world. Take, make, dispose. We take primary materials from the earth and we make products out of them. And the main resource, as you can see here in those pictures, very often for plastic is crude oil. And crude oil is not only a limited non-renewable resource, extracting it often also leads to oil spills. And also many other resources such as aluminum are quite hazardous when being extracted. I think we're mostly aware of that. But then we make products out of those raw materials. And in fact, well, actually also from an engineering point, those polymers, those metals, they are quite amazing materials. And most of those products are made out of raw materials, and the variety of possibilities, what we can do with them, it's actually quite marvelous. So not in general bad. But the problem is that in today's linear economy, after we take and make, we dispose. In fact, all of the worldwide plastic waste, out of it, only 9% is really being recycled. 12% is being burnt or thermally recycled. And that leaves us with 79% of plastic waste that is still sticking around somewhere, either in landfill or in the ocean. And well, so why do we need a circular economy? I think it's pretty obvious when also looking at those pictures, but also it's important to keep saying that primary materials are not an infinite resource. We will eventually run out of them. At the same time, secondary materials are a main lever to our CO2 reduction goals. So when we want to tackle climate change and stick to the Paris Agreement as an industry, we really need to look at secondary materials as a lever. And I brought you here this small graph, and it shows the CO2 emissions per kilo of material of aluminum, steel, and plastics. And you can see this is the primary material emission, and you can lower it to the end by using secondary materials. So already recycled materials that have been there somewhere before, like old plastic bottles, like secondary aluminum, well, I think we're aware of the sources. And then by using green energy, well, we can drastically reduce the footprint. Also, BMW has put out a goal to reduce the vehicles to have a secondary material rate of 50% by 2030. So yes. So how will we reach the secondary material quota and therefore our CO2 goals? Well, first we need to develop circular products. We need to establish a circular economy that brings the waste we create to new usage and that also fuels the demand for secondary materials. So today, this is what I'm going to be talking about circular economy, how it's done, what the challenges are, and also what BMW is doing on that matter. Yes. So here I brought a picture of some of the waste that that's happening during production. And maybe a small personal story. About 3 years ago, basically when I started working, I was at suppliers a lot, and I saw the production of products that I was also responsible for, especially from material side. And it really struck my mind what was the huge amount of cutoffs that I saw everywhere. Huge amount of cutoffs in materials that was going to waste during the production process. And when asking about what's happening with all that waste, I was told that it's getting thermally recycled. And so basically it's getting burned. And that really blew my mind. And I kept thinking, how did it come this far? Well, I try to sum it up. First, I think many of us can think back at our grandparents and also times when there was war, at least in Europe. Back in the days, we didn't waste that much stuff because things still had a value. Materials, raw materials, they were super valuable. And when things have a value, they won't go to waste. But in today's world, things have changed, and it's just really easy and really convenient as also individuals, but also as industries, as suppliers, as anything consuming and producing. It's easy and convenient to just use the thermal recycling way. Second is very often materials and products are not designed for recycling. So basically, that's the whole thing. We need to really think of how can we design things so that they can actually be recycled. The third is market for secondary materials is not well established. And that also comes with point number 4, that primary materials are today still sometimes cheaper than secondary materials. And so when I talk to my suppliers and I put lots of emphasis on using secondary materials, and very often it's a question of also the supply chain not being sure where to get it from, but also always a price issue. So yeah, and also from material characteristics, I see a lot of restraints in the industry, also from our development side at BMW, that some of the secondary materials might not be as good in terms of function as primary materials. But I think all of this sums up why the world that I just showed in the pictures before is the way it is. By really digging into this topic, there are so many solutions to this, and yeah, so I would like to encourage everyone to keep looking and to see that we can close this loop basically. But one of the points here that I know most about is the second one. It's materials and products are not made for recycling, not designed for recycling, not made for recycling. And I brought something that you might have seen before. Well, what we need to look at first is the reduction of waste. So back at the supplier, and an analogy that came to my mind was baking. Imagine someone being totally carefree with cutoffs in terms of food. Most people would go nuts if this happened that you see in this picture. And most people already learned from their parents and grandparents that when baking Christmas cookies, the cookie cutter needs to be placed with care, with as little scrap as possible. At least I was raised this way. What no one ever told me though was that actually the most efficient way was to make square cookies. Not any shape, but square, because that would be a zero waste design. So what you see here at the bottom, we can be totally careful with the cutting, as you can have seen with the cake. We can do lots of process optimization, and there are great algorithms and machines that can do this. But we can also start at the design process and do zero waste design. And especially in the fashion industry, also at universities, I know that this topic is being taught. I think it's super cool to really think into how can I change my design so that my product will have, well, very little or maybe even no amount of waste. Yes, we can totally transfer this to our vehicles, to any parts really, but that's really something that needs to be really thought of and implemented into the design process. Yes, and another circular economy approach that can be explained by this Christmas cookie dough is design for recycling. Because the dough is easy to shape and to roll out again, right? So if you cut those cookies out super carelessly, then you can just make the dough, form it and roll it out again, because basically this dough is circular. So when transferring this to other products, automotive products, we're not quite where the dough is at yet. So besides the zero waste approach, we also need to design products so that they can actually be recycled. So one of the really big things when it comes to circular economy is the design for recycling, the choice of materials. So when I tackle projects for parts of the interior, I always calculate the carbon footprint. I look at all the materials that we use today and see within that part, what are the materials and what is the footprint of the materials? What can I change? How can I reduce the carbon footprint? And also the next question is, well, is this material and also the mix of materials that I use for this part, is it as a total recyclable? And mostly today the answer is no, because we have been designing and developing parts for function, for design, for costs, and not so often for recyclability. And another thing that's really interesting these days is sometimes the lowest footprint and recyclability doesn't go together. So for example, when looking at renewable materials in the textile industry, like cotton or also like hemp or flax fibers, those have a like super low footprint, even a negative footprint. They absorb carbon dioxide when growing, basically. But then, in order to make them feasible for automotive industry, we very often add colors or glues or some kind of finishes that will ruin our circularity. So when it comes to a circular economy, really what I've learned throughout the years was one really important word, and that is monomaterials. We need to stick to one material within a part. No multi-materials, no materials that won't melt, basically, like Duraplasts. No fillers, no paint, no glue. And all that is quite a challenge, right? Especially in parts that still need to function, that still need to look good. But on the right, you can see pretty cool examples of other industries that have been tackling this approach. There's a shoe from On. It's this running shoe brand, and they've decided to make a circular shoe. And I think it looks super cool. It's basically made out of, I think, also one material. Also, VD, an outdoor brand from Germany, has just recently announced that they're making a circular backpack. And I think it's such a cool approach. And also something that's right from Munich is a brand called Recup. They're doing cups that basically avoid the single-use cups with a deposit system. And they're also made out of one material, which is polypropylene, and well, can be reused and recycled at the end of the life once they're bad. So yeah, so design for recycling is all about monomaterials. Can I substitute primary materials by secondary already recycled materials, and can I do that within the part also afterwards? And that is very often quite a challenge, but so important. Yes, so the second really important thing for a circular economy is design for disassembly. How can those different materials within a car, different parts, how can they be taken apart with a minimum amount of effort and explaining? And so basically we need to get rid of inseparable junctions and connections, no glues, also no rivets, and also sometimes screws and seams sometimes just have to challenge that this disassembly just takes way too long. So that's why there's the clock. Basically at a recycling company, it's just everything needs to be doable super quickly. And that also brought me to a basic but really cool example of circular design. And that's the yogurt cup that is in all of our supermarket shelves. Because, well, you don't need to read the instructions to know how to recycle this cup, how to well, get this paper off of the plastic cup. It's so intuitive and easy. And I think that's a great example of also how the design and the marketing behind this could work. So easy to comprehend. Yes, and the whole design for recycling, design for disassembly doesn't only help us within the recycling, it also definitely helps us with repair. And the whole design for repair is a whole new topic that is well, super crucial for longer lasting items. So that brings me back to BMW. At the IAA 2021, so last fall, we showed the BMW iVision circular vehicle. And so there it is, you might have seen it in the news or maybe even been to Munich to look at it. And it's basically a vision vehicle that that combines so many aspects of a circular economy. And well, it's really just looking towards the future and maybe even a dream, but it has so many cool approaches. Like when you look at the outer body, the color here, it's not actually color, because I said earlier, monomaterials don't like color or anything you add to it. So this is really, the gold happens by a thermal treatment. Also right here, you can see the BMW logo. Usually a logo consists of, I think, 4 or 5 different plastics and parts that are put together. But it also looks so luxurious and really beautiful by just lasering it into the body. So no extra materials needed. So this whole car basically is just, well, has so many circular economy approaches that totally combine this whole topic with luxury. And on the right, you see the design for disassembly quite well. One of the most hardest parts when it comes to redesigning and also tackling circular economy in the interior is the seat. The seat has tons of functions, tons of layers. It's safety critical, and it's also something that's in direct contact with customers. And well, at the iVision Circular, we showed a seat that is, well, with basically a button that you can push, and then basically all the different layers kind of fall apart or is super easy to disassemble. And of course, in a seat, we cannot use a monomaterial in all its layers because of, well, the complexity. But if we think it right in different layers and make it super easy for disassembly, we can think in like monomaterials within different layers that then fall apart basically. So that's one of the approaches that we've showed there. And I think it, yeah, it sums up the two things, monomaterials and design for disassembly, quite well. And since this is only a vision vehicle, maybe two things that have already happened and are already in serious production. One is one of the topics that I've been working on to like like 3 years ago when I was at that supplier, was floor mats. Floor mats are usually made of like 4 or 5 different materials glued together, unable to separate. But what's cool about floor mats is that they're designed for disassembly basically super easy because they just lay on carpet floors, right? So we made a monomaterial floor mat. We developed it, designed it, and it started series production in November. And what really blew my mind, I mean, a floor mat is pretty unsexy part, right? But you can transfer this idea and this, well, the whole thing that's behind it to so many other parts, especially in the interior. And this thing we're now applying to so many parts. Well, basically the entire interior can be designed in similar ways. And what's also cool, well, yes, floor mat is the unsexy part, but it's still, every vehicle has 4 mats, and we produce more than 2 million cars per year. That's an impact that really scales up. So I would like to motivate you that also small things will have a big impact when multiplying it. So what are the future open challenges? Well, first, a circular product development needs to start from scratch. And especially in big companies, sometimes that's not so easy because we stick to processes, right? I think especially maybe talking to many innovators out there, start from scratch, because really just lowering the footprint using secondary materials and products is making bad products less bad, but it's not making them good, and it's not the right, well, very often circular, well, yeah, we need to start with a white paper to do it right. That's my opinion. Second is new materials need a certain openness to new solutions. And that one of the things that I work on a lot is leather. Leather has a really a very high footprint. I think the reasons are known. But still, so many customers love leather. It's one of the materials that we consider premium very often, that people are even emotional about. So how can we substitute those materials where we cannot use secondary materials that are not circular by materials that give us the same luxurious feeling? Well, there at least a lot of openness is needed. Then third, and that's really interesting for us at BMW also, how can we will combine the thought of reduction, reducing footprint, but also reducing like lots of different materials, lots of parts. They reduce the thought of reduction plus the premium. How does this go together? And that's, I think, a very interesting interesting question to ask and to work on. Fourth, well, the circular supply chain is not yet established, really. It's really starting, and there's a lot of movement within the supply chain, but really our supply chain ends at the customer. And so a big further open challenge for the future is how will we get those vehicles, those raw materials back? Do we want this, and how will this work? And that is definitely yet to be established. But all I can do, I don't have an answer to this, but all I can really do from a development view is develop materials and parts in the right way so that they can maybe be recycled at the end of the life of a car, which is probably 20 years from now. So that's something that still needs to be established. But what I'm totally affecting now when making product circular is the whole production waste that we talked about in the beginning. So that brings me to my last slide. Personally, I would like to know that my products have a minimum footprint, that they have been used before, and that they will have a life after me too. And we can't solve our problems, our planet's problems, through individual action alone. We need organizations and the industry to step up too. And the good news is that the industry consists of us. Many of us are not only private individuals, but work and act on behalf of the industry. So I'm sure that we need to change that industry from within. Yeah, so I ask you, let's question the status quo together. Let's reinvent how we consume, how we design, how we develop, produce products. And changing products has a very direct, a measurable impact. And especially in big companies, as I said, every impact scales up. And if I can change like one single part at BMW, I can multiply by 2 to 3 million times per year. And that's what really drives me every day. And I hope it encourages you too, to use your knowledge and time and energy towards impact. Because really the biggest risk for our planet is believing that someone else will save it. Yes, thank you.
Wow, thank you. I love the baking analogy that you used. I think maybe instead of designing, we should think more about baking products. Yeah, and I think there were already quite some questions. I would move some of them, since they're more holistic, more towards the end, but probably one from Katrin Haas. Does monomaterial equal 100% recyclable?
It totally depends on what recycler you talk to. Some have more sophisticated machine parks than others, but in general, that's really sticking to monomaterials is always basically a very smart way. But sometimes, I mean, there are different kinds of recycling. There's also chemical recycling, which is a whole different story. But yeah, very often it's smart to talk to recyclers, and also to not only stick to the theory, but also really go and try it. And yeah, there's lots of learning in this whole thing, but really the monomaterial is one of the things that most people, that's in the literature, and that has proven right in my work also.
Yeah, thank you. And then maybe one more before we move on. Also, so many who really loved your presentation, just as I think such a great job, especially in such a vast topic, to really, I think, inspire and help us understand a little bit where to start in the whole product setting. So maybe one last one from Jane. How do you take durability into account when you calculate the carbon footprint of a material? So probably, what role does durability of materials also play in that?
A big one. We still need to fulfill the same requirements, be premium, but secondary materials and also renewable materials do not necessarily go with a reduction of function. It just needs to be done the right way.
Yeah, perfect. Then I would say I'm just checking. I think the last questions, we'll probably use that more since they're more open and for the round in the end. So thanks for this great start and for really inspiring us, Anna. And then I would say let's move more towards the digital sides of it. I mean, we see this shift also a lot in our projects from physical. There's more and more digital components that add to the whole user experience. So I'm also very curious to see and to hear your insights on that, Johannes. So I would open up round 2 with you, and I'm very curious to learn from you.
Thanks. Let me bring up my screen here. Fantastic. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. And I want to talk about Sono Motors. It's my company, or the company I joined 2.5 years ago. And I think what I want to do here is kind of walk you through our history and what we do and how we perceive sustainability as an OEM. I mean, we're a car manufacturer, per se. So in a way that kind of contradicts itself, right? When you think about sustainability, I think the automotive industry is one of the last industries to be named as a sustainable industry. But what I want to show here a little bit is what we do and how we do it, how I perceive it, and how my story fills in there. We go through this, there's a big disclaimer. So this is me. I already introduced myself, but I think what's important, I've moved to Sono Motors 2.5 years ago because I wanted to make a change in whom I work for. kind of aligning my personal values with the values of my company. And that sounds kind of, I guess, cheesy as well. But in the end, if I think about where I put my energy, it's 8, 10, 12 hours per day that I put into my work. And so it felt a little bit odd, kind of recycling my plastic and making sure I don't take a plane. On the other hand, kind of continuing to work in a company where not all aspects are aligned with this. So for me, this is also kind of my story about changing towards sustainability that I want to explain a little bit. Sono Motors has a vision, and it's very straightforward. It's a world without fossil fuels. That's what we want to achieve. We're a company that was established in 2016, and it was founded by two people, Johan and Lauren, who started building a car in a garage in a way. And now a few years have gone past, and by now we're about 300 people. We're listed on the Nasdaq in the US, and we're building our next generation car in a contract manufacturing facility, and we're close to releasing it to the customers. It's a bold vision, and that's also what convinces me about it. It's not about improving or expanding or making things better. It's about completely getting rid of things. And the tricky thing that always kind of intrigues me is, how do you bring that together with building a car? And I think a few things to start off. If you do a car company, you probably have to do some things different if you want to put a strong focus on sustainability. So we do a lot of work, but one of the major things that we have is we have a paragraph in our founding statutes that says the biggest goal of Sono Motors is to protect the environment and the people around it. And that translates to a lot of actions. It's not something we just put into our founding statement. We were, founding member of the Fair Cobalt Alliance. So we build a car, but we want to ensure that this critical resource is mined properly, and all the damage that can happen does not happen in our case. And the same goes for Leaders for Climate Action, where we kind of support the entire campaign, engage with it, and we're one of the very active members of that. The statute number 3 also kind of translates to all the contracts we put out. So whenever we approach a supplier, we ask them to deliver their carbon footprint, and it's quite new in the industry. And Anna has talked a little bit about this, and so you often, you talk to a company and you realize, oh, they've never done that. They need to do that now. So we also trigger some kind of change with some of the companies we work with. What do we do? I think Sono Motors is built up on 3 pillars right now. The most central one is our car. It's the Cyan. It's the car that you can see in the middle. It's a solar electric vehicle that's made to be shared, and it can be shared as a car sharing car, but it can also share the energy that's contained within our battery. The Cyan, and I'll explain that a little bit more later, has around 16,000 reservations. It's actually something that I really like about working at Sono Motors. Those are 16,000 people that support our cause, that believe in what we do for different reasons, but a big part of them also because we put sustainability first. And it's the car that I spent, a lot of my daily work goes into this car, into making it good. In my role, I'm responsible for the entire digital experience. So when you enter the car and you see the infotainment, that's what we handle, all the screens inside the car, but also the mobile app on the right-hand side. The second pillar is Sono Digital. This is what I work in. So it's basically using digital technologies to utilize the utility of the car. So to put it in the words of one of our founders, if we put a car out there with all this backpack of carbon dioxide, we have an obligation that it's used as much as possible. And that's one of the things we do here, right? We enable it to be shared, And even now, we already allow people to share other cars using the technology that we've built for the car. And the third pillar is when we talk about the design, you can see it a little bit on this picture. So it has solar integrated into the outer panels. And we use that technology. There's a lot of things that need to be done right to include solar in moving, shaking, vibrating objects that go through rain, heat, dust, etc. So we collaborate with a lot of other transportation companies and help them put solar on their vehicles as well. That's the third pillar that we do. You can see the founders, Jona and Lauren. By now, the team has grown immensely, and you can see a lot of very experienced people have joined. And it's basically a team of like-minded people. It's a company where everyone will ensure that we are making sure sustainability is lived. So there's no business travels unless really needed. We have a vegan catering within the company, and we have, you know, basically everyone that joins the company joins for a cause. I think that's a big difference in the working environment that I've seen before. Coming back to the science, we believe that you know, solar is the next wave in e-mobility. So we can have combustion engines on the one side. I think when we talk about sustainability, we're long past that. And then we talk about electric mobility, and it's still moving a big object with electricity that we need to produce. So we believe the car can do its part in it. And that's why we believe in solar in mobility. And the Scion is the first solar electric vehicle. It's first of all affordable. I think that's one of the things that's very important to us. Talking about impact, if you produce a car that's in a high price segment, we will not generate the impact then when we produce a car that's affordable to a lot of people. It also brings its challenges. In my daily work, our bill of materials is one of the most important things, right? We're selling a car for 28,500 euros, including the battery. So we turn every single euro around in trying to make that happen, just because we believe the impact of this car will be a lot bigger if we manage to make it accessible to everyone. One of the things that solar allows us to do is, and that's why I want to focus a little bit on, instead of putting bigger batteries in our car, we can put a smaller battery because the car keeps charging itself. And I'll show a little bit more about this later on. It has sharing integrated and it's carbon compensated on delivery. So when you buy the car from Solar Motors, you get a carbon compensated car, including all the production to your doorstep. How does this solar thing work? This graph is, I think, the best way to describe it a little bit. You know, when you take an average commuter, and let's look at the upper part, you'll have a certain range, and every time you drive to work or drive back, you take a little bit of that out of your battery. Well, other vehicles with the same battery and consumption have to charge in between. Our car charges whilst it's parked. That increases the range and can actually, for a standard car that's usually being used in Central Europe for you know, daily commutes, enable people to not charge for more than 1,000 kilometers. It obviously depends on where you are. These calculations are for Munich, and it also depends on how far you need to travel. But in the end, it's a car that's in itself contained and does not need additional energy, depending on your use case. Also, you know, talking about a few other aspects in terms of sustainability, the car has polycarbonate on the outside around the solar cells, which prevents us from painting it. So the entire car does not come without any paint. There's lots of recycled parts in there. It's a tricky part for us as well, because you know, if you want to make an affordable part, you put a lot of effort in getting off-the-shelf components, components that have already been developed for someone else that you can reuse. But you will find some recycled materials inside our car that we put there also deliberately because we want to support the circular economy. And we use the natural materials like moss instead of air filters. So we use a natural moss in our climate AC that allows us to you know, avoid changing air filters all the time. Let's look at the second pillar, solar. This is, I think, the most research part of what we do, and it sounds simple, but it's very complicated and research heavy development. When you look at from left to right, this is where we started. We put solar cells between glass, and on the right you can see the newest parts that we've produced, where you basically see the solar melting into the outer skin, barely visible. It takes a lot of time to kind of make that happen, and I think that's also a thing about sustainability. I think some of the solutions that have a big impact are not directly available. They take time to find them, and as you can see down here, we've processed and worked on 2,800 material stacks to make it happen. So it's a big effort that goes into making this accessible, but also available for the transportation market. It's definitely different than putting something just on top of something. We believe it if it's, if people want to use it, it should be nice, and it should be, long lasting, especially. So they continue to use it. The first ones would naturally break very quickly, would not be repairable, would have problems with a lot of things. And in the end, if you work on all these concepts and put them together, you get to a solution that actually allows you to kind of help vehicles take in solar energy. And we use that and we put it on different cars. I think I've said that as well. So as this is a long process and a long development, we're giving it out, and we're putting it on other vehicles that profit from it, buses, trucks, trains, and then even like vans, RVs in the camping industry. We're putting more and more of the solar technology we have already developed onto other vehicles that need to move. Now let's talk about what I do. When I started within the company, we were 60 people, and we met with the founders, and they came up with this very strong thing. Like, the main challenge we need to solve is, how can we take the most out of each individual vehicle? How can we make sure that when we produce a car, it's actually being used? And this is kind of what I've been working on in the last 2.5 years. And it basically, it's a challenge that's very open, but it's also, if I look into the goals that I get set as a person and we as a team, it's basically, it directly translates to that. How much will a cyan be used on a daily basis? That's what we, there's a certain number that we need to achieve, and that's what we're working towards. There's various pillars, but I want to talk a little bit about community car sharing. So when we started, we were basically faced with the challenge of how can we share cars with other people. And we learned very quickly that it's, a car is very special. So people don't hand it out to everyone. And when we spoke with all the pilot groups, we also learned that there needs to be a certain level of trust within each within a group, so that they trust each other to take care of that car. And if we don't achieve that, then we can make a car shareable, but again, no one is going to share it, and that's also a problem with many services out there. There's a good intent but in the end, it's about the usage and the real numbers that we generate. It's not about the glossy presentation and the general use case. It's about the very small nitty-gritty details you need to get right to generate an impact with such a service and to actually do good and help people move around. There's also things that you need to consider. So when I started, let's take a step back in this company. CO2 is something that we look out for in everything we do. So how can we run our servers in a cloud that's actually compensating? That's possible. You just need to look out for it. But also how can we collaborate with partners that live in different countries without traveling around all the time? So we got really, really good at doing remote meetings. And when we had to visit partners, we took the train. We actually, we did an IPO in the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange in New York without a single flight, because we believe this is how you should do the business. So what we do right now is we help people share their car within a community, and that's actually a concept that's picking up quite well. So people can share their car with trusted communities, friends, families, neighbors, acquaintances. You can think of lots of small and rural areas that are currently underserved by mobility offers that we actually start approaching here. We have customers, all over Germany, even in smaller villages, that are open to sharing their car, basically providing a car to someone else who then will not have to get their own. We do this by providing a service that helps car owners and sharing users with insurance, in case the car is not insured. It's one of the big challenges we found early on in our pilots, that people said, I want to share my car, but it's not only insured for me. So we make sure that we get an insurance that covers other people. We help them do the payments, so it's not about a friendly favor, but it's about something that automatically we deduct the money and bring it back. And we help everyone to kind of plan their days, so they can book and so forth. And this is kind of how we did it in the last year. So we took various pilot projects. We took existing cars, not the Scion yet, and did different projects. This is a picture of a building in Schwabing, and those people all lived there, and they started sharing their car together, and that was actually a big change because lots of them had their own cars, lots of them used them quite a lot, and then they realized that they can get along with less. So over the course of I think 4 months in total, they shared one of the Renault Zoes that we put out to them, and we learned a lot from them as well. We made sure that what we do actually works, is able to generate an impact, and that we had the things that we need so they use it actually instead of just having it available. What we've learned so far, and where I see our impact, adoption of such sharing service can increase the vehicle utilization. Based on the the pilot projects we've done, we see a 2 to 3-fold utilization of a car. And then also, if the person that owns the car, they can actually reduce the cost significantly that they have on their car. And we also see, especially in denser areas, we have a chance to reduce space by having one car shared by a community of people. I think most of you know the parking situation in the inner cities, but we've actually seen that in all the pilot projects, that a very dense parking situation got resolved. So this is just one of the pillars that we do. We also provide ride pooling, so taking other people along. So if the car is there and if it's being used, we want to make sure that other people can profit from it. And we do power sharing, which is actually the possibility to take energy out of the car to help your house power up, or also just charge your e-bike while you're out camping. So there's various use cases how you can use that. In the end, I think what I've learned in the past 2.5 years is that joining a company that's focused on sustainability changes a lot of the ideas and concepts you've learned in your daily working life. So whereas I've sometimes thought things are different, sometimes it boiled down to the question, what's better to the environment? And often that's pretty easy to answer if you think about it in your daily life. And I think what I want to motivate everyone is think about the impact you personally do, and what your motivation is to work at the company. Because in the end, as of now, you can all also vote with your feet where you want to put sustainability. The working market is pretty good right now. And I think I can at least say for myself that I feel like I'm having a much bigger impact on sustainability by aligning my work with my private beliefs. And I can recommend you considering that for yourself, because there's a big difference you can make with your head and how you utilize it. And that's it. Thanks for the attention.
Okay, yes. Thank you so much also for your perspective and how you really incorporated sustainability in the DNA of Sono Motors. I'm screening some questions here, but also, to the audience, now is a great time to ask more questions. You can also raise your hand, then you can ask them also personally if you prefer that. So that's, of course, always possible. So yeah, I saw some questions around just the production of solar cells, how carbon or energy intensive that is when you put them, or how it's said here, for putting solar cells on the side of cars or trucks that see hardly any sun. So I'm not sure how much you're integrated into the solar discussion, but that was one question around all the topic of solar.
Obviously, I'm not an expert in solar. What I can say is often people think we use those solar cells to power the vehicles, but especially in transportation, one of the major challenges is auxiliary power. So you think about a cooling truck, right? A cooling truck runs on diesel. And usually when they park, they still have to keep a small engine running to power the entire cooling equipment. So this is what most of the solar energy, especially on other vehicles, is being used for, the auxiliary things that usually otherwise would burn fossil fuels. The question is, vehicles and trucks that hardly see any sun. I think that's a question that solves itself by the customers, right? So someone based in Sweden or Finland would probably not consider that. So we see a lot of demand from the countries where obviously sun is way more available, which kind of starts round about North Germany and southwards, where the sun can make a significant contribution on a daily basis.
Okay, and maybe also just to keep those in mind who are not really from the automotive industry, I think what is really interesting is to see, like, so many companies now know that sustainability is such an important topic, right? But some of them I feel very lost where to start. So what would you recommend, others here in that joined? How can you start, no matter where you are? But if you really want to tackle that issue, what is it? What you would personally recommend? Like, I think a question that would be very interesting for both of you to see your views on that.
You want to go first now? Okay. Where do you start? I think a lot of the things is being very mindful what your actions actually do. And it was hard, or like it's not always easy to see in a regular working cadence kind of you do things. When I started working, there was always these things which I wondered was like, don't print this email. And I thought like, hey, that's funny, who prints an email? Until I realized there's a lot of people that print emails actually. and you know, that translates also to how you develop products today. So you need to think about what kind of impact does every small thing I do have here, and how can I become better in reducing that impact. And you know, taking our example, we use you know, a cloud provider where we do carbon neutralize all the energy that we use, right? We do data analytics that takes computational power that needs to be produced, but also on other small things. You know, do we how much energy do we keep within our battery as a minimum to be able to still put energy out when someone needs it? So it's smaller decisions on a daily level. I think that's what I would start. And in the other hand, I think I don't really have a good answer how you can start a sustainable, you know, culture change within a company. I was fortunate enough to join a company that has a sustainable route, and at the beginning of it, I don't think I'm in a position to kind of help generate that. I think it's a lot about people. It's a lot about awareness and communication. So, you know, making sure when someone feels that something doesn't feel right, to voice up your opinion. And if you're a leader of a company, it's about putting people in positions that have beliefs. That usually makes a big change quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just really important to be aware, as at least I can speak to myself, probably most people here, that we're so privileged, and we do so many decisions every day that are, well, we often don't even think about. And so I think that in private life, we think about, or I think a lot about my consume decisions and all that. And sometimes I'm just also lazy and convenient, but I think that, yeah, well, when really thinking about how privileged I am and what was this doing with the entire planet. So I think, yeah, that's something that's really important to just keep in mind and don't become too convenient. And on the other hand, like, we're very often also the narrative of just people like needing bamboo toothbrush or something, yeah, not using bags at the supermarket. That is important, but it's really just a small drop, because well, and then we pinpoint that at the industries, at the governments, and say, well, the government of the industries need to change, but all of us, all of people working, are part of some kind of, well, work somewhere, let's say, put it like this, and we can all have so much impact in our direct area of responsibility, not only in private life, and no matter what position, even as an intern, like anywhere. And also what's really interesting, I think, is that we're inspiring people around us. It's not only about what we do and what products we change or something. It's also really how we bring that spirit to the people around us, to colleagues, to bosses, to parents, to whoever. And that, yeah, I think that energy is just really necessary to also get all people on board.
Yeah, thank you. I think great points, kind of to take away, no matter where you are, and no matter in which industry or organization you work in, to really start with yourself and see how you can bring that in. Maybe one thing that relates to some of the things I think also you said, Johannes, you know, how to test it with users, or like how also users probably need to be educated. What, in your opinion, maybe also for both of you, are kind of like misunderstandings when it comes to sustainability, or where there's still a lot of education also needed, or information when it comes to really driving that? And that could be either for users or also within a company. Maybe there are some obstacles or some challenges that you both came across where you feel there's still quite some more education or information needed.
I think I have a very strong personal opinion on that. When we talk about sustainability, and you know, also the topics we just touched here, they get complicated quite quickly. And it's, as Anna also said, it's hard to make right choices, right? You know, which kind of recycled plastic is better. Is it better to reuse? Or, I mean, that there's obvious things that really everyone agrees upon, but when it comes to materials, it's hard, right? It gets down to very nitty-gritty things. So it's hard for the, let's call it the average Joe, to make these kinds of decisions. So my personal belief is when you generate products or design products, you need to incorporate it into them. So there's a strong belief of mine that you shouldn't, try to educate your customers, but do it right. And then you can try explaining it afterwards. And I think that's a deep thing that needs to be, more widely accepted, because I think often we try to explain very complicated concepts instead of doing it. And sometimes things can be really simple. And then the other thing I believe is, when working together with customers, I often notice that it's an important topic, especially for our customer group. I also always have to add that. But they're looking for, it's not about the product itself. Often it's about a belief in the values of the company that makes a difference. So I think a lot of sustainability, instead of investing it in explaining the product, can be invested into showing that the company is doing the right things, because that directly translates into trust for people for this company's products. So if you join your efforts to try to produce cobalt that's actually more sustainable than regular cobalt, that sends out some message, and people deduct from that the company is going into the right direction.
What would be your take, Anna?
Yeah, I can only agree to that, really. And yeah, I think there's nothing more to add.
Okay, yeah, then also just to the audience, you can also raise your hand if you want to ask some more questions. Otherwise, I'm screening through the chat.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes,
Sorry.
of course.
One of the things I believe is, Anna has talked about impact. So when she affects a part, she affects 2 million, or in the case of the floor mats. That's actually my favorite quote from you was, "What's cool about floor mats?" But yeah, so her impact is in small things that affect many people. I think my impact is in a big thing that may affect many people. And I think the same with products. I think when you talk about sustainability, I often feel like we're too idealistic. In the end, we need to generate things that resonate with people and incorporate that. So very idealistic concepts that never see the light of day, which Sono Motors still may be, they don't generate impact. But if they make it, they generate impact. So I think what we can all do is work on ideas that are sustainable and do everything we can to make them happen.
Totally. And I also really like the approach of your vehicle, actually, like as I said earlier, not being less bad, but actually being good. And I don't know, I kind of vision like a world where maybe mobility even takes in the carbon outside the air. Like maybe we can come up with vehicles that absorb CO2 at some point, because it would be so cool to actually still enjoy the mobility, but just not having this bad feeling in any way, but maybe even having a good feeling when using it because it's doing something good for the planet. That'd be so cool to get there at some point with any product.
Yeah, super cool visions, I think. There's also one more question I've seen in the chat here to you, Anna. So from Jane, I've been looking into materials recently and was interested in what you said about leather being always high CO2, as I think there is good and bad leather. Interested to know about the boundaries you use to calculate the CO2.
Yeah, as I said, leather is always an emotional topic. Well, I said it's always bad because well, it's just just footprints. It's not even my personal opinion. It's also, but when we look at the carbon footprint of a cow, we always talk about CO2 equivalents, right? So methane is also, it's like 25 times as climate heavy on climate as CO2. And more cows produce lots of methane, and the footprint is quite high due to that. And well, at BMW, we calculate in a way that we take all the products, basically products of a cow, and see what's worth how much, and the percentage of the value of the skin from the entire cow is basically the percentage of the CO2 impact of the cow that we're adding to the leather. So we're not calculating the entire cow, but only the worth of the skin, basically, plus the treatment to make it leather. And well, I think we know it from the whole meat or no meat discussion. Well, the whole industry around this is just heavy on climate, and so is leather, especially comparing to other products. So we do calculate the cow in, but only in a really tiny percentage due to its value. Mm-hmm. If that answers the question.
I think there was another side comment to it for clarity. This is when leather is a byproduct of meat industry.
Yes, but it is always as long as you pay money for it.
Okay, yeah, I think that was a pretty clear answer. There's one more. BMW is struggling with people who argue that an EV doesn't have sound, so they don't like it. iVision is an amazing machine, but it's not the prettiest car, obviously. How realistic is it to sell a completely circular car that wouldn't look as good as a regular BMW?
What was the last thing? How realistic is it that it looks as great as a regular one?
To sell a completely circular car that wouldn't look as good as a regular BMW.
Well, the whole challenge is to make it look great. We still want to stick with our principles, with luxury, with all of that, but maybe we can just change the narrative of what luxury is and all that. It's definitely not going to be it's not about going back to the Middle Ages. It's really just about using innovations and all that to come up with better stuff. But also definitely a behavior change.
Mm-hmm. I think there was a hand from the audience. Let's see. Yes, Hans. Hi.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, both of you. So it was really nice to hear the insights. I also have like a thought on how is the industry moving or thinking about, instead of being a producer of products, becoming more like a service provider. So instead, typically making industry is focused on selling products, and of course, if they then wear out, you can sell another one. So same with cars. If a car lasts for 20 years, you don't sell that many cars. If it lasts for only 5 years, you can sell more cars. But from a sustainability perspective, it's best to keep the lifetime of an object as long as possible. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are regarding that.
Maybe you want to go, Johannes.
Yeah, there's a few thoughts. I think I've often heard that, and it's kind of a strange conception that producers make things that don't last long. Especially,
I'm not saying you do, but
but it's a repeating pattern, and I think, especially auto companies actually want to make sure that things last long. So I don't think it's ever a dedicated choice. What you said about services, I think how we tackle it is that we provide every car without every car that we sell comes with services that allow us to utilize it more. So at least during the lifetime, we try to get as much out of it as possible, and such, trying to avoid selling more cars, which is, there's this concept of bias strategies. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's basically bias strategy in a way. We're selling a product with a product that actually tries to prevent us selling more products. So there is a flaw in this, if you want to see it like this, but I don't see it like this. I think it's about being mindful of it and, you know, providing those services that make the most out of the resource for free as well. That's one of the concepts that I also believe is very often mistaken. You know, you can often those services that allow people to use the things better come at an extra cost, which in turn reduces the adoption of those services. So it's also a challenge, right? I mean, everything we do must be economically viable as well.
Yeah, but I was more thinking like, okay, you sell a car at the start and then you have extra services, but is there like also a way of thinking like, okay, instead of selling a car, selling the service of the use of a transportation mean, saying you have like a lease or a subscription to a car from Sono Motors, and that you have a guarantee that you can always rely on a vehicle which is in an optimal state to drive you somewhere. And if it's worn out at a certain point in time, you get another one because you're still having a contract which allows you to use a car, something like that. Because then it would be interesting for the provider of the service to have a vehicle which lasts as long as possible, of course, because then they have less.
And then we would also have the like keep it close to us when it comes to recycling.
Yeah, you can take it back and you can take it apart yourself, reuse the parts which you can reuse. And
I think it's such a big question because it's really changing the whole business model that we're used to, and that's a big task.
I think like a little token of information that I feel like I need to share here is like, you know, there's this concept of mobility as a service out there in the industry. And there's lots of those leasing companies. And one of the things I see from my experience in the mobility industry is that actually when you have, you know, companies that provide cars as service, even rental companies, they often approach car manufacturers with longer durability. So, you know, a rental company like Sixt or Avis or whatever it may be, they actually try to, you know, get a lot of durability out of the car because in a way it aligns with their business interests, and they convey this requirement as a big, you know, as a big important sales channel back to the OEMs actually. So that actually supports your theory, I would say.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Okay, I think there's one very quick one in the chat to you, Anna. What software do you use for calculating the carbon footprint? And then we have one more lined up from Florian. And I think we then have to kind of move towards the end.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but there are various providers on that, and there's no norm for the industry, but there are 2 or 3 really big ones that most companies use. I think you can Google that.
Okay, perfect. Then I would hand over to Florian.
Yeah, I'm from the aircraft industry, and the problem with our products is they are very long time in service. Over 30 years is normal. And when it comes to an end, most of them actually end up rotting somewhere in the desert.
Yeah.
And a lot of the material there is lost, not recycled. And that's, yeah, it's a pity. It's really, I'm not very fond of it. And I think it's not the best way to say everything has to last as long as possible, because then at a certain point you get to the question, okay, how can I achieve this durability? And I think it's a better way to think about how can I find the right point to replace, repair, and recycle something, and get the whole material back to reuse it. So in this way, I won't have an impact. When I do it the aircraft way, we will never achieve the zero emission point, because we always have the waste at the end.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think probably very complex topics that would probably require a lot of follow-up. But yeah, definitely thank you for also this reference. I would now say, with a look at the time, I feel, yeah, there's so much more to discuss. However, maybe to round it up to you, Anna and Johannes, if there's one sentence that you could, use for the audience, like one main takeaway you want us to keep, what would that be? To really take with us for this week.
Let's change the industry from within.
Good one. Thank you.
I would like everyone to ask themselves if their job does good. Very simple question.
Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for both of your inputs, for starting from monomaterials, design for disassembly, and then really revolutionizing the way we drive and share cars, and also the watch out to not make it too complex, but to really put in trust in how we work and how we do things. And to wrap this up, I'll share my screen one last time. Let me go back. Now you should be able to see it. Perfect. So short ad towards the end. Our friends
Rebecca, it's not visible yet.
It's not visible yet. Thanks for pointing that out.
Now
Now?
it's there.
Perfect. They are, together with some other players, starting a circular city challenge, where the city of Munich, the city of Berlin, and some others are kind of a test field for innovators that want to put in solutions to make cities more circular. So if that's something you're interested in, we can post the link into the chat. You can apply until the 1st of April, but definitely a cool way to also put circular economy in the mindset of localities and cities. So we believe that's a cool thing worth promoting. So if that's something you want to find out more, please check that out and find more information in the link. And then, of course, let's stay in touch and hopefully see you again. If there is a topic connected to sustainability that you're super fond of, if you like to be a co-host of one of these type of sessions, if you would like to be a speaker, or if you know inspirational people and great minds, feel free to reach out to us. And of course, we love to stay connected with you anyway. So also feel free to scan the code and sign up for our newsletter on the bottom of the page. Then you're also always up to date when it comes to what we do and the next sessions we're hosting. The next Sustainable Transformers Roundtable will probably be by the end of May or June. And of course, we're happy to see you there as well. So yeah, for the end, I think there's nothing more to say other than a big thank you to both of you, Anna and Johannes, for sharing your experiences, for sharing your very honest insights, and also for, I think, providing us with a lot of inspiration that we can take away from really thinking about how we, just design products from the start, and also how we make it shareable in a way and really ensure the longevity of products that we use and services. So thank you so much for this great inspiration from my side, and also for everyone who joined. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being so active in the chat, for asking great questions. And have a great rest of your Thursday. And with that, goodbye from Munich and to all of the places from where you joined this afternoon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you also.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.